Apparently, there are memes and legends about your programming arc in Netflix. This Falcor system you mentioned. Somebody, I think it was Tej. How do you pronounce his name, by the way?
Tej.
Okay, Tej.
It's TJ would be his name, but we call him Tej. Or Telescopic Johnson.
Oh, wow. So many names. DDoS, distributed denial of service attacks, you apparently were able to accomplish the simplified version of that, of just DOS. That's a legend. So you basically broke down the system somehow.
Yeah. So
can you tell the story of that?
I'd be glad to. So this Falcor. So there's this Falcor business, right? And I did discover the bug before anybody else, and I did report it to security, and it was so bad. It actually got its own name, Repulsive Grizzly attack.
Yeah.
And they even give examples of how to do it. Effectively, what it means is that there is a request that targets both memory and CPU and will destroy. There you go. Look at how Netflix, the next one down was the article that was actually written. Yeah. I don't get mentioned, which is a little bit upsetting considering I was the one that discovered it and told everybody how bad it was. Mm-hmm. Anyways, and had to write the fix for it, or the first fix. So this is how it works, is that you can do something pretty similar, I believe, with GraphQL as well. It has the same kind of danger. Any of these kind of RPC, request as much or as little of the data as you would like frameworks are vulnerable to this kind of attack. So with Falcor, what you do is you give it an array. An array is called a path, and that's the path to the data. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you don't want you don't want to have to write out, I want row 0 or list 0 or row 0, column 0 title. I want row 0, column 0 description. I want, you don't want to have to write out all of that. Mm-hmm. So instead you could just be like, I want rows 0 through 10, columns 0 through 10, titles and descriptions. So you can write in a very compact, nice little format, and it'll give you all that data. It'll go to the server will mm-hmm. fill that all in and give it to you. Oh, dang it. List 3, it only had 3 videos in it. So what happens when I try to re-request the data? Well, I need a way to be able to tell my system that you'd have requested the data and there's nothing there. So this is called they call this like a boxed value. So it's going to be like type something, value, there's nothing there. We've already requested it and there's nothing there. They call it's like a sentinel value, if you will, mm-hmm. a boxed value. And we have this little special flag we'd pass called materialize, meaning that when you ask for a path, we will make sure we fill it out so we don't accidentally erase anything. And at the very end, we'll say, okay, the request you've made has already been made and there's nothing there. Well, what happens if I request rows 0 through 10,000, columns through 10,000, one more item through 10,000, and then a whole bunch of properties, and then ask it to materialize? Well, I'm about to go create billions of objects in the JVM, and what happens to the machine? It stops running. And then if we try to JSON, even if it could create them all, we then ask it to JSON serialize. It's not going to do it, right? Like, it's impossible. And so that was the attack vector, is a simple while loop would have taken down and held down Netflix for a very long time, because one request would kill one machine on AWS. And so that means it would just turn it all off. And this was on the website. This was on TV. This was on mobile. Like, this was profound. And here's the worst part. It was in production for years. So we couldn't even roll it back. There was no like, oh crap, let's just roll back to 2 weeks ago and we'll kind of fix forward and figure out. No, it's like we could roll back to 2011. Like, that's our option, is 2011, and that's it. So we had to figure out a way forward and all that. And so it was like the amount of problems that would have happened if someone would have discovered this is unstatable.
Just to be clear, the infrastructure that's serving the videos would shut down.
Yeah, the UI, like, you couldn't perform any actions on the UI. You surprisingly could still stream video, but mm-hmm. you would never be able to get to a video to stream because every action you would take would be completely shut down. And so it wasn't a DDoS because you didn't need a bunch of computers to try to overwhelm the system by making a bunch of requests. One request, one machine. If we had 50 machines serving the millions of requests, it'd only take 50 requests to shut down the entire UI.
Isn't it possible to do DOS or DDoS on basically any software system? Like, defending against all the, closing all those attack vectors is probably really difficult. If you take any sufficiently complicated software system, there's probably so many ways to overwhelm it.
Yeah, this is why people use Cloudflare. I think DHH said it best, which is like, we have our website and we have a strong bodyguard on the outside. So Cloudflare has a bunch of utilities all built in because, obviously, this is why everyone hates all these Bluetooth devices that connect to the internet because they just turn into attack vectors where people use those to DOS or DDoS other sites. And so you don't need something sophisticated. You just need a bunch of requests to come in and you can take down websites. And so that's why these fronts are really good at kind of discovering where these problems are. But DOS is a bit different because it doesn't have to be overwhelming by using resources with a whole bunch of requests. It really just means simply that there's a denial of service attack. One of them could be there's a regex attack that existed where Cloudflare actually did it to itself and shut itself down, which is there's a regex expansion attack. Where given the right kind of regex, if you know someone's running a specific regex, you can actually provide input that is maximally bad, and that thing goes to like super processing. It takes 10 seconds to process a single request. Then you only need to make hundreds of requests and you shut down the whole service. It's not like you need some giant machinery to make 1 trillion requests. You only need just some small amount to completely destroy a service. And so the web is an extremely difficult place to do it correct.
This is super fascinating. I do also wonder how many ultra competent, black hat hackers there are versus sort of the good guys versus the bad guys, how many bad guys there are, and what is the distribution of skill set on the bad guy side that are constantly trying to attack?
I assume there's probably a huge number of just really simple ones, script kiddies, right? Just people trying to just do things. And then there's a huge amount of like social engineering that just goes in where hacking's done not with a computer, but just by, one of the classic ones. Kevin Mitnick had this one in his book, which was you'd call up somebody pretending to be like, Charlene, we're doing some auditing and I think your pin's out of date on file. Is it 2323 still? And they're like, no, it's 4747. You're like, oh, thanks, Sharon. Boom, you just hacked them, right? Like the classic. People love correcting bad information. Yeah. This is like a standard. So like there's all these ways people hack. And so my assumption is that there are really great white hat hackers. There's really great black hat hackers. But the vulnerability space, the thing is that discovering a vulnerability and you don't let anyone know, the white hat hacker still has to make that same discovery.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the real thing is that black hat hacking in some sense has a fundamentally easier job, or at least a job in which they can take advantage of for much longer periods of time. One's the process of discovering who's breaking the system. The other one's trying to figure out how to break the system. And it seems like most software is held together by toothpicks and glue.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of dangers in every piece.
And also the social engineering aspect. That's a real attack vector. I think that's the attack vector that will do, in the long term, the most damage in the world. Especially as AI tooling becomes easier and easier to convince people at scale, sort of do that kind of email grandma. I think that's a really serious attack vector, like human psychology and all that. I kind of assume whenever there's a girl that approaches me, it's kind of some kind of social engineering project, some attack vector, some intelligence agency. In fact, I'm pretty sure.
We're back to a beautiful mind, aren't we?
Beautiful mind, yeah. I have a whiteboard upstairs that I calculate everything, everybody's trajectory and move.
You're not wrong, though, with the attack vector, especially in the day of AI. Like, one thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about as we integrate more and more AI is that prompt injection is like an extremely hard thing to defend against because it's not really clear how you defend against it. If it's just at the end of the day, word calculator, make word come out. If you can figure out the proper word calculator input, it might just break its bounds and start doing something it's not supposed to do. And there's a whole future where there's all these products that are going to be vulnerable to things they never thought about. Like it's one thing where you forget an edge case while you're programming. Now you have to guess what people might be able to think of making something that has access to a system be able to do, right? And you don't have a way to reason about it. Its reasoning came from Reddit and other words that it's read and how to put things together. Like this is it's a massive space that's going to be happening. That's why I'm personally thinking, don't give too many powers yet. Like, we don't know the attacks that are about to happen.